Recording in progress.
Welcome in to another the real underscore G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, and on YouTube. Alone version of the RJ Bell Stream Preview Major League Baseball edition at Munaf. Munaf at Sportsbetting.ag is still on vacation. He is, I think, in the very, very hot city of Milano right now in Italy. I hope he's enjoying his time, and we should see him back on the next episode Thursday night for the Friday baseball card. The first weekend since the All-Star break is in the books. Incredible weekend of baseball. A lot of great things happened. Didn't have a great Sunday myself, but going to go through the Monday card, every game that's currently lined, and come out with a best bet end of show. Unfortunately, my best bet got rained out on Friday, so no adjustment to any sort of records or anything like that. Munaf still 5-0 his last 5 since he didn't make a pick, and my rained out Braves pick was no more, so 4-1. So we were combined 9-1 our last 5 episodes with picks in them. On today's episode, like I said, going to give go through the entire card plus give a best bet end of show. Please stick around for that. And of course, we'll be giving out promo codes and hyping up the pregame.com free to enter contest so you can win a bunch of money giveaways and such on the pregame.com domain. But let's get into it. So like I said earlier, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, YouTube at the real underscore G Warner. And we'll start with a getaway day game, a fourth game of a 4-game series in the Bronx. We'll also have another one involving a New York team, a fourth day, but at a normal start time. We'll start with the Rays visiting New York Yankees. Currently the Rays and Zach Littell, one of my redheaded brethren, good arm. Not a lot of respect for him in the marketplace, though, as he's a plus 154 road underdog to the New York Yankees right now. Carlos Rodon, a minus 168 favorite. And our total here is 8.5. So my big interest here, initial interest, is to fade Carlos Rodon and fade the New York Yankees. They've been losers of the last 2 of 3. Ended up winning Friday night when I had a Tampa Bay lean. Had another Tampa Bay lean on Saturday. Tampa were able to win that game behind a great showing from Taj Bradley, and then also won Sunday in a little bit more of a surprising fashion. But Aaron Judge did a 3-run shot. Try to get back close or make a game closer. But it's really looking like a Aaron Judge team at this point. Soto, of course, is still having a great year. But until it sounds like Giancarlo Stanton's not going to come back until maybe Friday against the Red Sox. But they're trying to get him ready as soon as possible, checking on his soreness and trying to keep a dinosaur healthy is hard to do in the year of our Lord 2024. But Carlos Rodon has simply gotten demolished every time he's pitched. He came to the Yankees after an incredible year in San Francisco where fastball and slider made him look like the best pitcher in baseball. It has certainly not gone that way since he signed the big deal, and health is a big reason for that. But lately, Carlos Rodon, after starting the year off pretty sluggishly or slowly, he's gotten hit really, really hard. Started the year off slow, then was pretty good for a while, made everyone think, oh my gosh, this is Carlos Rodon is back. And then now every time he throws a fastball, it seems to go over the wall, especially in the first and second inning. The Rays are not a very powerful team. Michael Kay, the Yankees broadcaster today, when they hit their 5th home run, he's like, what the heck does this team do? They aren't a team that hits home runs. Well, actually, I feel like they win a lot of games at home because they're still able to hit home runs despite not having big names or really any sort of expenditures on their lineup. Plus, when they go to a little league field like in the Bronx, it's very easy for Richie Palacios to hit the leadoff home run, essentially, like he did on Sunday. So I think there's a lot more to this Rays team. Earlier in this year, if you listen to this podcast or my own Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, I went through it and said, I just don't really believe in the Rays. Well, I've kind of turned the corner with them. They're still very limited offensively. They don't really hit and don't move runners along and really struggle to score runners from third base with less than 2 out. But in a park like Yankee Stadium, third version, they're able to hit pop flies to right field or left field, and they're not even wall scrapers. So I really love the Rays here, plus 154. Run line minus 135, getting 1.5 runs is also not too bad, especially if the Yankees only get 8 at bats. But I think the Rays can win this game. So give me that plus 154 before we move to the, I guess, regular night slate. First game we'll start with is those New York Mets and David Peterson on the road at Miami, and Yonny Chirino starting for the Marlins. Currently Marlins plus 147 at home, totals 8.5, juice more to the under. Currently, David Peterson has been on the Express, coming up and down from AAA and back to the majors. I'm not really sure exactly about what he did because he was put on the maternity list before the All-Star game, but the Mets wanted more bullpen arms, and I think it worked out fairly well for him to come back and start in probably the easiest landing position in Miami that I think you can even dream of. I think probably even easier than landing for your first start back from the maternity list with a new baby. Probably easier than going to Comiskey or US Cellular or Garrett Ray Field, whatever they're calling it in Chicago right now on the South Side. Miami plays the Mets tough. They've had a pretty even series so far this season, despite the Marlins being 30 games under 500, the Mets being in a playoff position. But the Mets are a pretty big favorite here. Peterson is a minus 160 right now at BetOnline, where I'm quoting the lines at courtesy of today. That's too big of a price for me considering how competitive these games have been. But when I see a total at 8.5 on getaway day, when both these teams are seeing new opponents on Tuesday, that does, I think, probably put my biggest interest in under 8.5 or under 5, probably first 5 innings. If you want to avoid some bullpen, which the Mets certainly have some issues there. Though at the same time, I think you might even want the extra time to see these offenses continue to struggle to score runs. I think Saturday was a 1-0 final. The Mets and the Marlins combined for over 14 with runners in scoring position. Horrible, but also a pretty low number of only 14 attempts in the entire game. Just not much for me to do here. The Mets are pretty expensive, and this is certainly a spot where they could stumble. Moving next to St. Louis Cardinals, visiting the Pittsburgh Pirates. Got Andre Palante at Mitch Keller. Currently, Keller minus 129 favorite at home. Totals 8.5. Juices split both ways, so no real tell on which way it's going. St. Louis Cardinals, who were my fade on the Friday best bet that got delayed or postponed and canceled, but then had a doubleheader on Saturday. Didn't really work their bullpen too hard, fortunately for St. Louis, and then played and I think beat the Braves on Sunday as well. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Pirates took the first 2 at home against the Phillies as big underdogs and then lost on Sunday as about even money type of underdog at home. But good series for Pittsburgh. They're above 500, and that's huge for the Pirates. And I think will provide them with some reason to stay in this race and not sell all their assets like they're usually used to at this time of year. St. Louis, the other side, they're in the playoff positions right now. Had a good series in Atlanta, taking 2 out of 3, if I'm not mistaken. Palante has kind of stretched himself out in the rotation this season, was definitely a fill-in starter, giving 3 or 4 innings for a while, but should probably be able to go at a decent rate. And the St. Louis Cardinals bullpen is still pretty good. The big question here is what St. Louis is going to do offensively. They batted Paul Goldschmidt 7th in the lineup enough that the Mets announcers were remarking on it during a completely separate game, though I guess both looking at the wild card race right now. To me, I think the Pirates are pretty expensive for what we've seen from Pittsburgh so far this season, minus 129 currently at BetOnline. I mean, certainly they've been playing very well and deserve this type of respect, but certainly isn't something we've seen much this season. My biggest interest here is betting the Pirates, though I'm very curious to see if some money comes in on the Cardinals and makes the Pirates even a little bit cheaper at home, especially after seeing them close an underdog all 3 days to potentially the best team in baseball, the Philadelphia Phillies, but still says something to me about the Major League Baseball market and how they really think of Pittsburgh at this point. Moving next to the Detroit Tigers, visiting the Cleveland Guardians. Got Tarek Skubal starting against Cookie Carlos Carrasco. Currently Skubal minus 108 favorite on the road, over under 7.5, juice very heavily, or juice more to the under, not necessarily very heavily, but 10 cents different, minus 115 under 7.5 right now. Carrasco is hanging on to a rotation spot with his strong hand, I guess, or just barely by a thread. Whisker, which I think Carrasco definitely has had whiskers and facial hair in the past, but he's not someone I want to back. I'm very interested to see if the Tigers move to an underdog here, considering the Guardians are the best home team in baseball and led the American League, I think, in percentage point record heading into the All-Star break. Certainly did not look very good despite a dominant Friday start to the second half against the San Diego Padres. Got blanked on Saturday, didn't really do much there, and weren't looking very good on Sunday either. Meanwhile, the Tigers won 2 out of 3 in Toronto and had a lead after a grand slam on Sunday, despite a pretty average at best starting pitcher on Sunday. But the Tigers won 2 out of 3. Certainly looks like they've put the nails in the Toronto Blue Jays coffin. And then the Tigers are really fighting to try to stay in a playoff race. And, they're inching their way closer to it. Skubal certainly a trade target and looks like the Cy Young front runner. We'll see how long he can stay healthy. But ultimately, that's the side I want here. I think fading Carrasco is important. It's scary to go against the Guardians bullpen, but I think at this point I'm willing to do it because I think Skubal will outpitch Carrasco, and Tigers have been playing really, really well, winning I think 11 of 14 at one point this weekend, probably dampened by their loss on Sunday, but still Tigers have been good and they're really hitting the ball, which has not been something you could say about the Tigers for a lot of time this year. Move next to the Cincinnati Reds. Hunter Green visiting Reynaldo Lopez and the Atlanta Braves. Braves minus 148 favorites at home. Over-under is 8. Juice very heavily to under. Might see 7.5 before this kicks off or first pitch is thrown. And I got to say, I think Hunter Green is a big fastball, and he's got a lot of work to do to miss bats against the Atlanta Braves. Certainly underperforming, or else this number would be a lot bigger. And Reynaldo Lopez has been awesome, not giving up any runs and really great with runners in scoring position. That didn't work so well for him his last start before the All-Star break against the San Diego Padres, but the Cincinnati Reds are a much different offense, much weaker offense, not one of the best and best at making contact in the league like San Diego is. So I think my biggest interest here is to try to fade Cincinnati. I just don't know necessarily how to do that because I'm not going to really lay minus 148 on the Braves team that's been underachieving and lost Ozzie Albies also, I think, today. It might be why we see this under getting juiced so heavily. Minus 118 right now, under 8 is. Certainly be waiting to see if this hits 7.5 or even falls below that. But I still like over. I think Hunter Green get hit pretty hard, so that make me have a little bit of interest in the Braves run line as well to get some plus money on a lopsided victory. Move next to the Philadelphia Phillies visiting the Minnesota Twins. You got Ranger Suarez at Bailey Ober. Currently, Ranger Suarez minus 124 road favorite. Total is 8. Juice more to the over. Phillies were disappointing this weekend, but had a really good effort on Sunday. Pretty dominant from them, as it probably should have been against a very contact-oriented pitcher, though one that doesn't throw 97 like the one they faced on Saturday. That also pitches to contact more than I think anyone should in this year. But Ranger Suarez is a big question. Can he keep up the incredible start to his season? He's shown it before, but not for entire season's length of time. On the other side, Bailey Ober for the Minnesota Twins, they had a weird kind of scheduling thing, or they didn't start their second half on Friday. I guess they just had to balance the games out that way or something like that. But good for them, I guess. And Minnesota, they're much better at home, built for that park. Though I got to say, they're built to hit home runs, just like the Phillies are. My biggest question is the health of Minnesota Twins, as they were really limping into the training room or the All-Star break, whichever one you would have called. Carlos Correa didn't make it to the All-Star game because of injury, didn't play right till the end of the All-Star break, and then didn't play in the opener on Saturday. So there's some injury concerns there, but I like that home underdog plus 114 as we speak. Want to get some promo codes out there to you. Thank you for being loyal listeners, checking in with us all season, especially as Munaf is out for this episode or 2 in a row, and it's just me, myself, and Irene all by myself. But use the promo code CRUSH20, CRUSH20, like former Crush Davis of the Baltimore Orioles, one of the biggest heists for Major League Baseball contracts in history, or maybe something you could think about on Valentine's Day. That's usually a day of horrors for me. But use the promo code CRUSH20, 20% off for all listeners to this Major League Baseball podcast. Good for 7 days from the podcast release. So you have until the 29th of July. But why wait that long? You can use that 20% package. We don't offer higher numbers that I've seen in the 4 years of podcasting at pregame.com. So go throw that promo code in, CRUSH20, save 20% on the big purchase items like grabbing me, my soccer for 90 days, or buy me for the rest of the season. You can grab a football package, of course, as college football and the NFL will be following, plus plenty of other great handicappers at pregame.com. Get the best bang for your buck. Save that 20% on whatever you purchase. And the more times you use the code when we give them out, the more episodes we'll do and cover Major League Baseball more than you could even want those 2 times a week. Again, Crush 20, good for 20% off, 7 more days to use it from today. We'll move now to the next game on the list, the Milwaukee Brewers visiting the Chicago Cubs. We got Tobias Myers starting for the Brewers at Javier Assad for the Cubs. Currently Myers minus 109 favorite on the road. Cubs coming back minus 101, so near even money. Total's 8.5, choose all the way to under. Probably see 8 other places across the gambling landscape. The Brewers are leading division and have been better, but the Cubs are still fighting, still kicking. We're playing really well into the All-Star break and then had some big struggles offensively on Friday and Saturday so far on this, I guess, All-Star game, All-Star break. Return from the All-Star break is probably the way I should put it, but I probably should just move on from there. Tobias Myers has been, I think, unexpected to claim a rotation spot, but has done it. You could say the same for Javier Assad, though he's been in and out of the rotation recently. I think my interest here is in betting the Cubs as a home underdog. I would love to see them move to even money or better, and we might see that, though we've been seeing a lot of home underdogs turn overnight into waking up the next morning for me, seeing them be favorites. So I'm not sure that's going to necessarily be the case in this one, but that's, I think, what I'm waiting to see what happens and very curious to see where the line moves on this one. I think the Brewers are limited and certainly a way different team away from home. And I think the Cubs are more likely with a big crowd behind them to put out a better effort and hopefully be a little bit more efficient with scoring runs than they were against Zach Gallen on Saturday. We'll move next to the Chicago White Sox, another Chicago team, but this one on the road in my neck of the woods in the Dallas area in Arlington, visiting the Texas Rangers. Eric Fetty, certainly big on the trade list, and he'll be pitching against Michael Lorenzen, who's probably very, very happy to start his second half against the worst offense in baseball. The Texas Rangers are minus 165 favorite. Total is 8. Used to split both ways, so no real tell on where this number will move. But I don't think there's a lot here for me on the White Sox, especially they might be trading Eric Fetty and Luis Robert, and might happen mid-game. I never know if that's going to happen, so you better be very comfortable in backing the White Sox and other teams that are surely selling. Rangers could be one of those, but haven't confirmed that just yet. But we know the White Sox are selling, so I'd be very cautious backing them. Wouldn't even really want to do it anyway, but especially this week. Move next to Arizona Diamondbacks and some guy, Yaxel, I believe, Diaz, starting at the Kansas City Royals. I wish I knew his first name better because I have watched 2 of his starts so far. Cole Reagan starting for the Royals, one of the best power arms in baseball, but he's a pretty big favorite here, minus 147, totals 8.5, choose very heavily to under. Might see 8 before first pitch is thrown. Feels like a big price for Arizona. They've been getting a lot of respect in ways that I kind of wasn't expecting this season. Though I think they've been certainly nowhere near that magical playoff run to the World Series last season, but they've been a lot better despite getting nothing from their top prospect turned everyday player in Corbin Carroll. But Diaz has been pretty good. I don't love the bullpen of the Diamondbacks, but the Royals have issues there too. Yes, they did sign Hunter Harvey, and he's been very, very good for them. But I don't know necessarily how I feel about Kansas City at this point, and I feel like I need to see a little bit more. Though they definitely are on they're near a playoff spot and have a lot to play for, as do the Diamondbacks. So I think there's a lot to think about in this one, and the underdogs, my biggest interest. Tough to play an over here in a really tough park to hit home runs, especially with a really big starting pitcher for the Kansas City Royals going with a lot of power stuff and able to certainly quiet any sort of offense. Maybe under 8.5 or under first 5 also seems of interest to me. Just seeing a low-scoring game that maybe the Diamondbacks steal. Moving next, the Boston Red Sox visiting the Colorado Rockies. Currently, Tanner Houck is a minus 170 favorite to Austin Gomber, the Colorado Rockies. Total here is 10, juiced to the over pretty heavily. You might see 10.5. I think it's been jockeying between 10.5 and 10 across the marketplace since I've been watching it. The Red Sox gave up 1 million home runs in Sunday Night Baseball, got swept on the road at the Dodgers, though I thought deserved so much better. Probably could have won 2 out of 3, and it wouldn't have been much of a change, but blew the game Saturday. Had real trouble Sunday despite taking a 2-0 lead, and certainly blew Friday night with Freddie Freeman grand slam. I don't know. intentionally walking someone to get to Freddie Freeman doesn't sound like the greatest plan, but certainly everyone's a Monday morning quarterback, and hindsight is 2020. But Houck's been awesome. It's hard to play overs with him because he's been so dominant this season, but certainly not hard to suggest that he might not have the best slider or movement on his pitches in Colorado, where a lot of starters have struggled that relied on movement. Gomber's going to try to keep the ball on the ground. That's dangerous. The Red Sox are certainly got a lot of speed and will be all over the base paths, running and stealing bases. So I'm not necessarily sure where to go with that one besides like an over 10. That's probably my biggest interest in that matchup. We're going next to the Houston Astros is in the Oakland Athletics. We've got Spencer Arrighetti on the mound for the Astros, now in first place in the AL West. All it took them was 2 games against the AL West leader in the Seattle Mariners to win both of those and take back first place. Though a loss on Sunday currently has them barely in first, but still in first. Oakland Athletics start Hogan Harris. He's a 126 underdog at home. Over-under is 8. And juices split both ways, minus 110. No real indication of which way that will go. I imagine in Oakland, you might see some low-scoring type of bets coming in. And we also expect, since the Athletics are so reliant on home runs, despite being in a really tough home run park, there might be some money on the Astros and how well they've been playing lately. But the big question, I think, is Arrighetti, how well he throws. A lot of breaking balls. And if they're good, he can certainly keep an Oakland Athletics team quiet. If he's not throwing those well, or fastballs kind of missing command, then he's, I think, in danger of potentially surrendering some multi-run home runs. A 3-run shot, one of the biggest momentum changers in the Major League Baseball game today. Like the Astros, chances to win the division, but I think I like 126 on Monday night and have some interest in under 8 there. For the last game on the list, before we get to best bets, and of course, I also want to make sure I mention this big contest that we're running at pregame.com, free to enter. So before we get, I guess I'll go through it now. The Major League Baseball second half king, top 5 places will win. It's a second half contest in Major League Baseball. Minimum picks 100, maximum 250. You play all the way from July 19th, just the start of the second half, all the way to and through the World Series. First place, $500 in pregame bulk dollars. Second place, $300. Third place, $200. Fourth place, $150. And fifth place, $100. All free to enter. Go join today. And I'm sure you can find exactly more details on that. Feel free to hit me up at @thereal_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, or on YouTube if you want more questions, or I'm sure you can find it on the pregame.com forums or on the website as well. Last game on the list is those Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, easiest name to say. Tyler Anderson visiting Seattle Mariners and Bryce Miller. Seattle minus 155 favorite at home. Total is 7, juiced all the way to over. Very interesting, and I haven't gotten a status on Julio Rodriguez just yet, who crashed into a wall on Sunday afternoon, injuring his ankle, it looked like to me, right ankle, I think, dropped the ball, ended up resulting in a triple for Yordan Alvarez, who ended up having a pitch violation strikeout and then hitting for the cycle. What a day. Not my favorite. Hate the pitch clock rules, but whatever. I've already lost 2 at-bats this year because I did back the Astros on Saturday and on Sunday, and losing at bat from Yordan Alvarez reminds me of opening day when I lost an at bat from Rafael Devers and the Red Sox. Just brutal rules, but I guess everyone needs to abide by them. Tyler Anderson's looking to audition to get traded, probably back to the other side of Los Angeles to go pitch for the Dodgers, or maybe he's a possibility to move to the Red Sox. I don't think that there's a lot of value in him, but he's been pretty good so far this season, and he gets a Seattle team that was reeling. The Angels actually, I think, won 3 out of 4 against the Mariners heading into the All-Star break. Now they go to Seattle, and I feel like there's not a ton separating these teams at this point. The Angels are very bad, but the Mariners are feeling the pressure, and they are one of the worst teams at making contact, which a contact pitcher like Tyler Anderson seems like a tough matchup, but I think anyone really pitching against Seattle is worth a look at this point. If fantasy players are trying to fade your offense and you're leading a division, that's not a great sign. And I think there's a lot pushing the Seattle Mariners, and I have a pick on them to not make the playoffs, not the World Series, of course not the World Series, but definitely not the playoffs if I'm not expecting that. Took a plus 135 entering in the second half. So I'm further in the anti-Mariners camp, though they certainly have been a great home team. And this is at home in their ballpark where Bryce Miller flourishes. But big question about him is keeping the ball in the yard. Seattle seems to work as a park for him. But I just think Seattle's really been struggling. So I'm leaning towards the Angels, though probably under as well. Tough to thread that needle with a road team and an under, but certainly I think that's the way for a weak offense like the Angels to go win on the road, is facing Seattle team that really can hit, use their bullpen pretty heavily this weekend, and we'll see what that looks like going forward. So now it's time for the best bet portion of the show. Of course, this is where you can grade me, and I'm 4-1 our last 5 episodes. Unfortunately, had Fridays canceled, so no real sweat, I guess, on that one. No adjustment, unfortunately, to our record, which I'm disappointed, but happens. I guess I should only pick domes or something like that to keep that as simple as possible moving forward. But for my best bet, before I get there, I want to make sure you use that promo code CRUSH20, good for 20% off all possible things listed on the pregame.com website, especially my packages all season and any of the footballs, whether it's American where you're throwing or the soccer version where you're kicking. I guess you're kicking in American football too, but plenty of stuff up there on the site, and plenty of other great handicappers as well. Use that promo code CRUSH20 so we make sure we keep doing Major League Baseball podcasts for you. But for my ultimate, I guess the best bet on this show, it's time to do it. So let's get right into it. I'm going to go with an over in that Denver matchup, the Red Sox and the Colorado Rockies. I'm not so worried about Sunday night and that impacting the speed or the lineup of the Red Sox. I just think Tanner Houck might have some trouble, but the Red Sox can certainly score a bunch off Austin Gomber as well. So I'll go over 10 in that matchup right now. Current number at BetOnline, over 10 runs, Boston at Colorado. And that'll be my best bet on this episode. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will sign off now. We'll see you back, hopefully with Munaf and I, Thursday night for the Friday card, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.
Recording stopped.